These MCU shows have really been something else, haven't they? WandaVision was this fantastic homage to great family sitcoms and their tropes, while Falcon and the Winter Soldier really exceeded my expectations by delving into the discourse of racism in America from a superhero's perspective. But right around the corner we have Loki, which, as far as I can tell, appears to be the most ambitious Marvel project yet, for the fact that it's working with something that no other film or TV series in the MCU has had. And I'll get into what that is in just a moment, but first I just want to say, as always, thank you for swinging by my channel. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, why not do so now? That can be your good deed for the day, and if you're feeling extra generous, why not hit that like button as well? You'll have my eternal thanks in response. So, let's talk about Loki. To understand why Loki the show is so important, we need to look at the recent trends of the MCU. Even though this is a franchise that features wizards, a talking raccoon, and a villain that looks like Grimace, the MCU has always stayed grounded to a certain degree of reality. For instance, both WandaVision and Spider-Man Far From Home had hints at the existence of a multiverse, but the evidence turned out to be nothing more than a red herring. The only thing that has deviated substantially from the norm is the time travel aspect of Avengers Endgame, but even with that film, it spent a great deal of time developing how time travel was supposed to work within the context of the MCU. It couldn't be used willy-nilly, and by the end of the film, a precise retracing of footsteps was required to prevent chaos from ensuing. From what we can see from the trailers, however, Loki won't be bound by the logic of the MCU, nor will its story have to serve a greater narrative like other MCU projects. Instead, it seems as though the events here are taking place in a vacuum. Of course, the events of Loki will still be part of the MCU, but given that this is technically happening in the past and in a separate timeline at that, it's hard to imagine that any of the events happening here will have an effect on the major canon. This means that Loki could have free reign to tackle any sort of narrative it pleases, and from the looks of the trailers, that could be exactly what the writers have done. Within the show, Loki gets a glimpse at a completely devastated New York in one scene, and in another, he's talking with a clearly not dead Black Widow on Vormir. There seems to be so much going on that it's really difficult to pinpoint exactly what the plot of Loki is going to be. In one part of the trailer, it seems as though Loki is actually D.B. Cooper, the man who infamously hijacked an airplane, jumped out the back of it mid-air, and was never found. Whatever Loki is about, it's clear that the show won't be tied down by the typical needs of the MCU's greater narrative. The strange thing is that Disney already has an animated series in the pipeline called What If, that will take a look at different ideas of what could have happened in the MCU if certain events had played out differently. But I'd argue that Loki could follow that style of storytelling just as easily with its separate timeline. Plus, Loki could serve as the blueprint for what is likely ahead in the main MCU canon. At this point, everyone is expecting a multiverse storyline in Spider-Man No Way Home, and in the Doctor Strange sequel, Multiverse of Madness, it lets you know right there in the title that the film will not be shying away from the multiverse concept. Of course, I do hope that the show just completely leans into this sense of absurdity, because this really is the first time that the MCU can just go wild. Otherwise, the show could end up being a bit of a disappointment if it just plays it safe. But either way, I'm still really excited for the show's premiere. And if you have your own expectations, or maybe even some different ideas about what Loki's plot could be, then please let me know in the comments below.